All right, let's level up our teaching game today. We're diving deep into TPACK, and, it's all about blending tech into your lessons,
Right.
but in a way that actually makes students learn better. I think a lot of people have heard of TPACK,
Oh, yeah.
but we're going to go beyond just the basics, the stuff everyone already knows.
Right.
We're taking what you already know about teaching, being a great teacher,
Yeah.
and showing you how tech can really make it even better.
What's really cool about TPACK is it, recognizes that you already know a lot as a teacher. You know your students, you know your subject.
Right.
You know how to teach. TPACK just gives you a way to use technology to, help all that, to enhance it.
So it's not about being a tech expert.
No, not at all.
It's more about using it in a smart way.
Exactly. It's technology is just one of your tools, right?
Right.
And like any tool, you got to know how to use it the right way.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's open up that toolbox. Our source, it breaks down TPACK into 3 main parts. We got technological knowledge, content knowledge, and pedagogical knowledge. Those are the ingredients to make a really awesome lesson, I guess.
And just like with ingredients, the key is how you put them all together. Sometimes if you're really strong in one area, it can kind of make up for if you're a little weaker in another, at least for a bit.
Interesting. So you're saying even if I'm not super techie, but I know my subject really well and I'm good at getting my students engaged.
Yeah, exactly.
TPACK can still work for me.
Absolutely. If you're strong in those other areas, content and how you teach, you can figure out which technologies will work best for you, even if you're not, a tech wizard.
Okay, that makes me feel better. All right, so let's break down these TPACK parts. First, we got technological knowledge. It's more than just knowing how to turn on a computer, right?
Right. It's more like understanding what technology can do, what it can't do. How can this specific tool actually help students learn? What are the problems I might run into using it?
So, for example, let's say I'm using Quizlet for vocabulary practice.
Right.
My technological knowledge would be knowing how to make the sets, share them with students, but also how to use the different features in Quizlet to make it work for different learners or to get them working together.
Exactly. It's not just about the basics. It's about knowing how that tech can actually help you teach better.
Okay, I see. All right. Next up is content knowledge. That's where, teachers really shine because they're the experts in their subject.
Yeah, and content knowledge is so important for choosing the right tech and using it the right way. It's knowing your subject inside and out, knowing where students might get confused.
Right.
And being ready for what they need.
So, if I'm teaching about the American Revolution, content knowledge wouldn't just be the dates and names. It would be understanding the different perspectives, the different sides of the story, right?
Exactly. And that deeper understanding helps you figure out, okay, how can I use technology to bring this to life for my students? Maybe you use a digital timeline so they can see how everything happened.
Oh, that's cool.
Or maybe you use primary sources, real documents from that time to get them thinking critically.
Awesome example. Okay, so last one, pedagogical knowledge. This is the art of teaching, right?
Yeah, it's all about understanding how kids learn and how to create really effective lessons. It's knowing different teaching strategies, how to assess what they've learned, and of course, how to manage your classroom.
So let's say I know my students learn best by actually doing stuff, by hands-on activities.
Yeah.
My pedagogical knowledge would help me pick technologies that support that kind of learning.
Exactly. Maybe you'd use a simulation so they can experiment with different things, or a platform where they can teach each other.
That's great. Our source, it emphasizes that TPACK isn't about just throwing tech in there for no reason.
No, definitely not.
It's about using the right tool for the right job and making sure it actually helps students learn better.
And that's where the magic happens. When you bring together your knowledge of technology, your content, and how you teach, you get something really special that transforms the whole learning experience.
Okay, I'm convinced. TPACK is all about being thoughtful with tech, but I gotta be honest, sometimes it feels like there's just too much tech out there. Where do I even start?
Yeah, it's a common feeling. It can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
Don't feel like you have to learn every new thing that comes out. Just start with what makes sense for you and your students, what you think will actually be helpful.
So instead of trying to do everything, I should focus on a few things and get really good at those.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to try things out. See what works, what doesn't work. If something's not working, you can always move on.
That's a good point. All right, I'm feeling more confident about this TPACK thing. But before we get into specific examples, can we talk about the elephant in the room? Artificial intelligence?
Yes, AI. It's changing everything, including education, that's for sure.
Our source mentions tools like Grammarly, for writing, and those adaptive learning platforms. But I'm curious about your take on how AI is impacting TPACK.
AI is definitely shaking things up. It has this amazing potential to really personalize learning. Imagine every student getting a learning plan that's made just for them, for how they learn best and what they need.
Wow, that would be amazing. But are there any downsides, any risks we should be thinking about with AI in the classroom?
That's a great question, and it's one we'll definitely talk more about. But first, let's look at some real examples of how teachers are already using TPACK to make learning fun and effective. Welcome back to our TPACK Deep Dive. I'm really excited to share some actual examples of how teachers are using this, in their classrooms.
Yeah, me too. I want to see TPACK in action, see how it really works. Our source talks about this lesson plan for 8th grade math, all about linear equations. Let's break it down and see how the teacher put those TPACK pieces together.
So this teacher, they get it, Linear equations, they can be tough for students to really understand.
Yeah.
They're often presented in a way that's kind of abstract, so students have trouble connecting it to, real life.
And that's where TPACK comes in, right? Using technology to make it more real, more hands-on.
Exactly. So in this lesson, the teacher uses the Desmos graphing calculator.
Oh, yeah, Desmos. I've heard good things.
It's a great tool for visualizing, like making math visual, and it's free.
Cool. So how does the teacher use it?
Well, they start off with the basics, like they always would. Whiteboard, markers, explaining what a linear equation is.
Right.
They do a simple example step by step, make sure everyone's following along.
So they build that foundation first before bringing in the tech.
Exactly. Then they introduce Desmos. The students can play around with different numbers for the slope and the intercept, and they can actually see how that changes the graph. It's like a little experiment.
Oh, I see. So it's way more engaging than just plugging in numbers into a formula.
Right. It's like they're discovering the math themselves.
Cool.
And the teacher's guiding them with questions, getting them to notice patterns, make connections.
Very hands-on. So they've learned the concept, played with it on Desmos. What's next?
Now they apply it. The teacher gives them a real-world problem that you can actually solve using a linear equation.
Okay.
Maybe something like figuring out the cost of a cell phone plan based on how much you use it.
Oh, that's a good one. Makes it relevant to their lives.
Right. So the students get into groups, and they have to work together to figure out the equation that represents the problem. Then they use Desmos to graph it and see if it makes sense.
It's like a problem-solving challenge.
Exactly. They're putting their TPACK skills to the test.
Yeah.
And the teacher's there to help, offer guidance, give feedback.
Yeah.
The lesson wraps up with everyone sharing what they found and what they learned.
This is a great example of how tech can make teaching better but doesn't replace the teacher.
For sure. The teacher's still super important. They guide the learning, lead discussions, make sure the students are really getting it.
Sounds like this teacher knows their stuff, their technology, their content, and how to teach it. They have all the TPACK parts down.
Absolutely. They've really thought about how to use technology to make learning better and keep their students interested.
Okay, so we saw TPACK in a math class. What about other subjects? Any examples of how this can work, across the board?
Oh, definitely. Let's imagine a high school history class studying the Civil War. The teacher could use virtual reality to take the students on a field trip to a battlefield.
Wow, that's amazing.
They could actually see and hear what it was like, get a real sense of what happened.
That would make history come alive.
Right. And think about an elementary school science class, learning about the solar system. The teacher could use augmented reality. So a 3D model of the solar system pops up right in the classroom.
That's so
They could walk around the planets, see them from all angles.
I bet they'd remember that lesson forever.
Exactly. TPACK can be used to make any subject more exciting, more effective. It's about being creative and finding the right tools for what you want to teach.
So we've talked about the good stuff, the benefits of TPACK, seen some cool examples. But let's be real, there are challenges too, right? Actually putting TPACK into practice.
Of course, nothing's perfect. One of the biggest challenges is access to technology. Not every school has the money to give every student a laptop or tablet, or even reliable internet.
Yeah, that's a real problem. How can teachers work around that?
It takes some creativity. One thing you can do is blended learning, where students do some things online, some things offline.
Okay.
That way, even if you don't have enough devices for everyone at once, everyone gets to use the technology.
That makes sense. It's about using what you have in the best way.
And don't forget about low-tech solutions. You can still make learning fun and interactive without fancy gadgets. Think about interactive whiteboards, document cameras, even just simple objects they can manipulate.
It's about thinking outside the box, right? Finding creative ways to get students engaged.
Exactly. Another challenge is teacher training. Some teachers might feel overwhelmed by all the new tech coming out all the time. They might not feel confident using it.
Yeah, I can see that. So how can we help teachers get better at TPACK?
Professional development is key. Schools need to give teachers opportunities to learn about new technologies, new ways of teaching with them, and to share ideas with each other.
So creating a culture of learning and collaboration.
Yeah. And peer support is huge. Teachers can learn so much from each other. Encourage them to share their successes, their struggles, and create a community where they can all support each other on this TPACK journey.
That's great. So we talked about access to tech, teacher training. What about time? Teachers are already so busy. How can they find the time to plan all these TPACK lessons?
That's a valid point. It does take time to plan and prepare, but it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
So starting small is okay.
Absolutely. Start with like 1 or 2 lessons a week where you use technology.
Right.
As you get more comfortable, you can do it more often.
Like building up those TPACK muscles one step at a time.
Exactly. And remember, it's not about just adding technology for the sake of it. It's about using it to make learning better, more meaningful. Sometimes the simplest tools are the best.
So focus on what works for you and your students.
That's the key. TPACK is a journey, not a destination. Enjoy the process, be open to learning new things, trying new things, and celebrate the wins along the way.
This has been really helpful. I'm feeling inspired to rethink how I use technology.
I'm glad to hear that. But before we finish up our TPACK deep dive, there's one more thing we got to talk about: artificial intelligence.
AI, yeah, it's changing everything, education included. What are your thoughts on how AI fits into TPACK?
AI has the potential to totally change how we teach and learn. We have to be smart about it, Approach it with both excitement and a critical eye.
I'm ready to explore that AI TPACK connection, but let's save that for next time. All right, so we're back, and it's time to tackle the big one: AI, artificial intelligence. How does it fit into this whole TPACK thing? It feels like AI is everywhere now, and education's definitely not immune.
Yeah, you're right. It's really changing the landscape.
Yeah.
And when you think about how AI impacts TPACK, well, that's where it gets really interesting. One of those promising things about AI is how it can personalize learning. Imagine, every student getting a learning plan that's just for them, based on what they need and how they learn best.
That's the dream, right? That individual attention we wish we could give every student.
Exactly. AI can help us actually do that. Take adaptive learning platforms, for example. They use these algorithms to analyze student data and then adjust the lessons and the pace, on the fly.
So if a student's having trouble with something, the platform will give them more help, more practice.
Exactly. And if they're doing really well, it'll give them more challenging stuff. It's like having a personal tutor for each kid.
Our source also mentioned AI writing tools like Grammarly. Where do those fit into TPACK?
Those are great, especially for helping students with their writing. As teachers, we can't always give feedback on everything right away, but an AI tool can. It can tell them right then and there about grammar, spelling, even style.
It's like having another set of eyes on every paper.
Right. And the students get that feedback instantly, which helps them learn faster. Plus, it frees us up as teachers to focus on the bigger picture stuff, how well they're arguing a point, their critical thinking, the things that really need a human touch.
So AI can help both teachers and students with writing. What other cool AI applications are you seeing in education?
Chatbots are getting really popular. They can give students that extra support whenever they need it, answering questions, helping them through tough material.
Like a 247 study buddy.
Exactly. And you can even tailor them to specific subjects. Imagine a chatbot that helps with algebra, or one that gives tips on writing research papers.
Wow, the possibilities are huge. AI really could change everything about how we teach and learn. But, I have to ask, what about the downsides? Are there any risks or ethical things we need to be thinking about?
You're right to ask that. With any new technology, we have to be careful. Data privacy and security are big ones. We have to make sure these AI tools are being used fairly, that they're accessible to all students. And we can't forget, AI is a tool. It's not meant to replace teachers.
That's so important. That human connection, a teacher's passion, that can't be replaced by a machine.
Totally agree. TPACK is all about that balance between technology, how we teach, and what we teach. AI can be a powerful part of that. but it's up to us as educators to use it the right way, in a way that benefits our students.
So as we, explore this whole AI and education thing, what are some key things our listeners should keep in mind?
Well, first, don't be afraid to try things out. There's so many amazing AI tools out there, and a lot of them are free or pretty cheap.
Be curious, right? Be open to new things.
Exactly. Second, think critically. Don't just jump into anything. Think about the pros and cons, and always put your students first.
Use AI to make learning better, not to replace the human side of teaching.
Yes. And finally, remember that TPACK is a journey. Technology is always changing, and AI is a big part of that. So be ready to learn and adapt, and you'll be just fine.
This has been such a great conversation. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on how I can use technology.
I'm so glad to hear that.
And to all our listeners out there, we hope this deep dive into TPACK has given you some new ideas and maybe even inspired you to rethink how you use technology in your classroom. Remember, TPACK is a framework, it's a way of thinking, and it's a journey. Embrace it, explore it, and make it your own. And until next time, happy teaching.